Hey everyone, welcome to Cube Reviews episode 22. This is your host Ian Braverman. I hope you're having a great day. Today I am joined by a guest I have been so excited to talk to for the last month or two since I spoke to you. Anthony Mattox, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Uh,
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be on.
oh yeah, of course. I've been a longtime listener of Lucky Paper Radio. So everyone definitely go check out Lucky Paper Radio, awesome cute podcast. I doubt that if you know about my podcast and you're listening to me, then you haven't heard of Lucky Paper Radio. But if somehow that's not true, definitely check it out. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you, but introduce yourself.
So I'm Anthony. I have been doing a podcast for a couple years now with my friend Andy about Cube. So that's been kind of my major sort of interaction point with Cube in the Cube community. But I've been playing Cube for 6 or 7 years, I think. I've built four cubes in paper over the years, and yeah, I mean it's honestly just the main way that I play Magic these days is we have a weekly cube night, and I've played a lot of Commander, I've played a ton of Limited, but cube is really just the comfortable place that I found that makes sense for the way that I want to engage with Magic these days.
Yeah, what's your favorite limited format?
Ooh, like in terms of favorite draft set.
Yeah.
I think the one that I remember most fondly was Dom, that like first returned to Dominaria.
Oh yeah.
But that was maybe just people often talk about like what's the best limited set of all time, and I think honestly for most people it's just like this is the set I played the most. And that was really the format when I was like playing the most limited and like really getting into it. But yeah, I mean there's so many cards from that era that I just really have a lot of nostalgia for.
That set was amazing. I loved sagas. I really liked the
hmm
Legends theme. That was a really cool set. And Blink was good in that format. So
Of course. And I know firsthand that your love of playing Blink decks is not like just a bit for the show. That is apparently the way that you like to play.
yeah. Speaking of that, we played recently at Vertex Philadelphia. You gave me the SmackDown. We were playing the Fey Cube. We talked about the Fey Cube on the last episode, episode 21. So everyone go check that out. And tell me about your going to different Cube events. I know that you go to CubeCon, Vertex. Tell me about your Cube experience right now.
That's been such a huge shift over the last couple years is that, we played a lot of Cube in our local groups and people were kind of isolated, but still connected a lot online. And then in the last couple of years, I mean, KubeCon really just like set the precedent for you can run Cube events. And it was like a totally unknown thing. Like, how do you manage what cubes people are playing? Like, will people trust to have other people play with their cards? It was like there were just so many unknowns. But then, really, since the first KubeCon, after 2 or 3 years, it's kind of just exploded. And it's just been so much more fun to like go to an event and be like, oh, yeah, like I know a couple people here. Like always, it's like I saw you at this event in this city, and I saw you in this city, and it just adds such a I don't know. It's just a level of like comfort and community and fun to go reconnect with people. That's made these events a lot of fun. It's also been interesting to I play a lot of the same cubes in my local play group and just be able to go to another city and play a bunch of cubes I've never played before and don't know that much about and kind of like test my mettle has been a really fun aspect of it as well.
Definitely. I was just at Cube for a Cause last weekend and I played some weird fun cubes. I played the Ancient Desert Cube by
Oh
Bones.
yeah.
I played the Cascade Cube by Zach Barish. I played the Loam Cube by Gwen Decker. So I love getting in some weird cubes and you got to go to those events to get them.
Yeah. Yeah, the Cascade Cube is a real puzzle. And I like at Vertex, I finally had a little bit of success with it. But the Loam Cube I haven't drafted yet, and it scares me. I don't
Oh,
know
it's
if I'll
awesome. Very
maybe
fun.
one day I'll get a chance to draft that.
Yes. And tell me about your history with Magic outside of Cube too.
Yeah, I mean, I started playing sort of kitchen table as most people do, and then eventually Commander was kind of the default thing. So somebody suggested, let's build some Commander decks. I guess this was when Commander was a little bit newer. It was like when the first precons came out. And Commander was a really fun way to just explore the depth of Magic and just be like, let me find this one commander that cares about plus one counters and dig into the history of all of the cards that might be relevant for this. Eventually I kind of like realized that the gameplay was actually not that fun for me. Like multiplayer isn't necessarily what I prefer, and it was just like we don't need to get into all that, but I was like, okay, I want some more like strategic, rewarding of playing well kind of gameplay. So that's when I kind of got very into limited in a way that I was like, okay, I'm not just going to make this a thing I do with some friends every once in a while, but like I'm going to make this a hobby. I'm going to go start drafting. And that was probably around like Kaladesh, I think was the first set I got really serious about and started like going and playing with strangers, I guess is like a big sort of inflection point. So I played a lot of limited for years, and then eventually Cube kind of turned into the thing for a lot of reasons. The pandemic was definitely an accelerator because we were not necessarily able to go out and draft, but we could still play some cubes. And it kind of like just did the best of both of those other two formats where it's like I can still go dig into history of Magic to find all those like interesting cards that I think are cool that I want to be able to play, but it also offers the ability to play in a strategic way and like actually try to play well, which outside of CDH, which I haven't touched, you can't really do in Commander. So it's like it really is just the best of both Commander and Limited combined.
Absolutely. And now you're an expert cube drafter. You go 3-0 every draft you do.
I don't know. I've gotten lucky a couple times, but we'll see how long that lasts.
Well, you kicked my butt, so
I mean, you say that, but you were the only person to take a game off me in that particular draft. That deck was really something. I don't know how that came together.
yes. And what are some of your hobbies outside of Magic, and what do you do for work?
So, for work, I'm a computer programmer. I build websites. Andy, who I do Lucky Paper with, is actually a coworker. We've started a company together outside of college long time ago and are still working together. We do a lot of websites, especially focused on like research and academia these days, which is interesting and a lot of fun, and also very depressing in 2025. But that's a whole thing. And then outside of work, I really like cooking is my biggest hobby. I just love to cook, and that like bridges greatly with Magic because I get to like host people. We do a draft, cook a dinner, so it was fun to do. And then I also try to do some artistic things now and then. It's difficult as an adult to maintain an artistic practice, but I've been getting a little bit more into pottery and doing some laser cutter art projects. So, yeah.
That's lovely. That's lovely. And if people want to hear more about it, definitely go check out Recross the Paths. I know you were on that talking all about your many cube projects that you've done for the community, which is really amazing. But you've created things like the cube and commander map, the rotisserie draft template. So really amazing how much you've also done for the community too.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a really fun part of playing Magic is like not just sitting down to play Magic or even sitting down to like dig through cards, but the fact that it is a thing that can bring people together and then spawn these other creative projects. And it's like, oh, like here's an opportunity to make a tool for discovering new kinds of decks or discovering new kinds of cubes or just solving some very concrete problems. Like I really often need to get a list of cards and need to get the Scryfall ID for them. And it's like I could build a tool to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's the great thing about being a software engineer. You can create things.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, it is like being a wizard.
Yes. And yeah, I say it every week. If you happen to be in the area, come to Games IRL, Avon, Connecticut. We cube every week, Saturdays. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you about one of your cube projects that hasn't been as discussed on Lucky Paper Radio, I would say, the Irregular Cube, which is not the regular cube, the irregular cube.
Yeah, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about this cube because you often have people on to talk about how they're exploring in new space or pushing boundaries. And although the regular cube was at the time kind of surprisingly novel, it now feels kind of old hat in a lot of ways. It's like, yeah, of course, it's just a cube of your favorite cards. That's what everybody does. But the irregular cube, which is very much sort of designed not necessarily as a foil, but in response to some things that I experienced in playing the regular cube a lot, I thought that might bring something a little bit more interesting and appropriate to the kind of interviews you've been doing here.
Yeah, and I would say that besides maybe the vintage cube, the irregular cube has to be one of the most well-known cubes in the community. It has 800 followers or something on Cube Cobra, right? So
Yeah, it's got a lot of followers, and I'm like a little bit apprehensive about that because I think people often associate that as a sign of quality, but really that's just because we've been doing a podcast for a while, which is a thing that is valuable. I appreciate that, but I really designed the regular cube as I sort of wanted to plant a flag in what I saw as a huge field and be like, look, you can just build a cube that has whatever cards you enjoy in it. And the point was to highlight how big that field was, not to say this is a great cube. So yeah, I feel like I need to put that caveat if we're talking about like the popularity or success of the regular cube. It's like it's good, but also any other cube you build in this vast landscape can be equally as good.
Oh, you're too humble. I drafted the regular cube at CubeCon and I had a great time. I think I drafted Blue Eye Blink and it was a great deck.
That makes sense, and you can definitely do a little bit of that. Was the Oketra's Monument combo in it at that
Oh
time?
yeah.
That was fun. That was fun while it lasted.
Yes. And so the regular cube, if people somehow haven't heard of it, it is around a master's power peasant cube plus, I would say. And it's a ton of fun. And the irregular cube, according to your cube cover page, does have similar design goals, like focusing to be around that power level, but totally different archetype landscape. Tell me about the inspiration and building of this cube compared to the regular cube.
Yeah, so there were kind of two major goals that I had going into it. So the regular cube was all about like it's kind of just my own custom limited set. It's like these are cards that I like, and I have like a couple sort of benchmark cards for power level that I'm going to try and focus around and keep things relatively narrow. And that was good. It got played a lot. It got refined a lot. The sort of like power level band got very narrow, where it's like, yeah, pretty much anything is kind of like a valid first pick in any given pack, which makes sense. Like that's kind of just the feedback loop is like I cut a lot of the most powerful cards, cut a lot of the worst cards. But I also started to kind of miss kind of the high highs and miss the cards that were a little bit overpowered, but it was really fun to draft them. It wasn't so fun to play against the same overpowered card every single week and like lose against it again and again. But the first time you got to play and like build around some of these power outliers, it was really satisfying. I mean, I think all the way back to the very first iterations of regular cube, I had like some of the conspiracies like WorldKnit and Sovereign's Realm and some uncards like Booster Tutor. And these cards were just, I thought they were really fun to draft once, but it was also then like, oh, Sovereign's Realm kind of like train wrecks the entire draft for everybody. Like, this is just not a feature of the workhorse cube that I want to be pulling out on a weekday night, like a weekly night to just be like good, clean magic. So the regular cube was both built to just be let's sort of celebrate some of those weirder things that I don't want to see all the time, but want to see occasionally. And then also just to, again, like thinking about planting a flag in a giant field, this was just meant to be somewhere else in that giant field. And while regular cube might focus on +1/+1 counters and artifacts and landfall and a couple other sort of themes that tend to come together very often, I was kind of inspired here by a lot of Time Spiral and Time Spiral Remastered mechanics where there's suspend and morph and saprolings. I really sort of leaned heavily on the Time Spiral precedent to say like it's okay for saprolings to be a theme here and a couple other things like that.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds awesome. I totally agree with you. When you first build a cube, like for example, my proliferate cube, it was a horrible mess when I first built it. But in some ways, those really rough edges are fun. Maybe not every time, like you said. Like if somebody goes, all will be one into Black Sun Zenith and deals 20 to you on turn four, then maybe that's not great every time, but once in a while it's fun. And
Yeah, I mean,
so
if you think about like what are the stories that people tell, it's like, oh my God, I killed somebody on turn four by doing whatever that was. It's like, yeah, those high highs are really what like I think as cube designers, it's important to focus on.
And I think that that's also a beauty of having multiple cubes.
Yeah.
When you have only one cube, like if your only cube was the regular cube, then you would have to fit all of your goals into that one cube. Like I've had friends who started off with one cube and then the cube gets a little bit muddied, like it gets into a lot of different directions, and then they build another cube and they put all the cards that they really wish could work in their first cube into that new cube, and then they're able to redefine that first one. and having like set boxes. So I feel like these two cubes, while being of a similar-ish power level, having totally different goals, was it like a way for you to keep the regular cube as you wanted it, to also test out these other things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you say they're a similar power level, but what's really notable is that the irregular cube has a much, much wider power band. So the most powerful cards here are kind of crazy. So I actually sort of like wove that into the structure of the way the cube works is I split it into two chunks. There's like the core set, which is like 400 cards of things that, that if you played it would play very similar to the regular cube, but, obviously with sort of different themes. But then I have this separate module of cards that are mostly much more powerful. They mostly take a little bit of work to build around. And there's also just some weird, wacky things thrown in there. And then generally we take a small chunk of those cards and shuffle them in and deal it out. So it's like, I've called it the rare module. It's a little bit misleading because there are plenty of cards in the core set that are rares, and there are plenty of cards in that extension that are not rares. But the idea is that sure, every once in a while there's going to be this broken conspiracy in the draft, and somebody's going to have their super cool story of like, wow, I drafted this Sovereign's Realm deck and got to do this insane stuff. But it's going to be different things every time, and everybody's going to have their own power outliers to create those sort of story moments and those. I mean, maybe even more than story moments, those like opportunities for them to think about, like, where is my draft going and what's the crazy thing that I'm going to be able to do, but it's going to be different every time. So it's not going to have that same like exhaustion that we experienced with some of the power outliers when we were playing the regular cube very often.
Definitely. I think the rare module is such a cool aspect of this cube. There's a pretty big power band when it comes to this rare module.
Oh
There's
yeah.
Joel Riel, which is a sweet card. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, you get a cat. All the way to Recurring Nightmare, which I would say is one of the most powerful cards of all time. Tell me about how you picked the cards to put into this rare module, and what was the line for the cube to say, maybe this deserves to be in the rare module, but not in the main cube itself.
Oh sure. Yeah, I mean that line is honestly a little bit blurry, and I've taken the liberty to like upgrade some things to the rare module or downgrade some things. But as far as like what goes into it, there really is no line. I mean, there's even like Mind Twist in there, which is historically just like not a fun card that people don't want to play with. But I
Ah,
think
it's
it's
so
kind of
fun. Come
interesting.
on.
I think it's especially interesting looking at some of these really high-powered cards, or maybe like Wheel of Fortune is a better example. This is a card that people think you just play this in the Vintage Cube and it's like a Storm card, or yeah, I mean, Recurring Nightmare is just this combo card. But taking the opportunity to be like, what if we put these cards in this otherwise kind of like low power context? Like maybe Wheel of Fortune isn't a Storm card. Maybe it's just the top end for your mono red aggro deck to refill its hand. And having that opportunity to sort of recontextualize cards and play like very powerful cards in a place where they're going to play so differently has been really interesting. And yeah, having that knob to be able to kick things up into the rare module or downgrade them back is an interesting lever to have.
Yeah, it's like you're drafting foundations, and then you open up your pack and there's Recurring Nightmare in there, and you say,
Exactly, yeah.
what is this doing
Which
in here? I don't know, but it's cool.
I'd rather play that than Sire of Seven Deaths.
Definitely.
At least let me see cards move between zones a bunch of times before I lose.
Yeah. And this cube has very different design goals in terms of archetypes from the regular cube. As described in the write-up of the regular cube, it's mainly focused on onboard mechanics. Things like heroic, archetypes like blink, aristocrats, decks that you need to have permanence on the board for them to really function. And then in this cube, the irregular cube, it's much more focused on archetypes that don't have to be on board as much. For example, having things like graveyard decks, having discard, flashback, madness. Tell me about the dichotomy between these two cubes and what the design process is like when you have such an overarching different idea of what you want it to be like.
I think if you we've done a couple episodes on Lucky Paper Radio where we've sort of started with one core card and iterated out from there, sort of like treating that card as a seed crystal and seeing where that goes. And that's kind of where I went with this cube as well, where I was thinking about like, okay, madness is a really fun mechanic that is a little hard to make work. A lot of people try and make it work in cubes, but I was curious to see if I could make that work. And then that bridges over to like Delve and other graveyard themes and cycling matters and discard matters and sort of building out this sort of collection of themes that fit together just based on this sort of like chain of interactions and sort of that combination of following my own sort of curiosity about the way that mechanics can kind of link to each other. And then also, I mean, I ended up in a place where I'm like, oh yeah, it makes sense that this is kind of the collection of mechanics that they arrived at in Time Spiral because there are a lot of sort of like very natural connections. And then there's also saprolings, which, that's just great.
Yeah, saprolings are awesome. I totally agree. And I was totally inspired by that episode. I built the whole cube around the reality chip. It was great.
Oh, that's awesome. I've tried to make that work in a couple of cubes, and it's always medium for me. So I want to try your reality chip cube.
Yeah, that cube doesn't exist anymore. It
Never
didn't work
mind.
too well. But I still try to make that card work in a lot of places. It's fun. And yeah, so a lot of these archetypes really focus on the ability to self-discard. So another question I have for you is when people think about their cubes, often people talk about cross synergy between archetypes and then the generically powerful cards that can fit in really any archetype. Would you say that things like self-discard or self-mill, when they work for so many different archetypes in the cube, do those become the generically powerful cards?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because discarding cards is such a common sort of cost to things. It's like an input mechanic. It's like they can design cards that use discarding in so many ways. It's like, okay, discard a card to get more damage. Discard a card to get new cards. Discard a card to make your creature bigger. It's like it can do almost anything. Plus, it then just ties into anything that cares about the graveyard, caring about specific things being in the graveyard, caring about having a lot of stuff in the graveyard, cares about whenever something hits the graveyard. It's like this kind of interaction between discarding these zones is just such a flexible design space that Wizards has explored very thoroughly that I think it's very easy to make a cube that is very focused on it. But I do also want to say that, like, I think a lot of cube designers go into designing a cube and they think, well, this is my cube. It's about name a thing. It's about Blink, just to use an example at hand. And like, I mean, I think you've actually talked about having this experience of like every single card then relating to Blink. And I think that that extreme focus is not necessary if you just take your sort of like set of bread and butter effects and you skew it 10-20% towards a particular theme, that theme comes through and you can still have a totally like reasonable environment. So the idea that every single card has to be like 100% towards the theme, I think is just really not necessary. And that's definitely how I approach this, where it's like, okay, there's a little bit of this graveyard or like other zones matter is sort of underlying this, but I'm totally happy just to include reasonable bread and butter cards that are going to sort of be the medium that that message sits within.
Yeah. And would you say that the rares in the rare module, you picked them to make these archetypes more powerful? Like,
No, I would say I picked them because I thought they were cool. I thought it would be cool to play Wheel of Fortune in my like limited deck.
hey, it's still pretty good in a madness deck.
And it's great but have you ever played a cube before where you're just like, I cast Wheel of Fortune, I cast these three madness cards? No, like that never happens because we have these generally very sort of like strict idea of Wheel of Fortune as a high powered card and doesn't make sense here. So yeah, I mean that is the kind of thing that I was thinking about when choosing the rares.
Well, I'm going to need you to play my Rakdos cube then, because there's a little
Okay,
bit of that in
I'm
there.
here for it.
Very cool. And so some of these archetypes in the cube I would consider to be a little bit more on the parasitic side. For example, cycling as a overall arching theme. Tell me about how you were able to fit those in without it becoming something that felt on rails.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are more narrow. I feel like, and I think we're going to get to this later. Blue red often is a color pair that, for whatever reason, the way that I design cubes tends to be like pretty focused, and you could just be like, I'm doing the blue red thing, and that's kind of it. And I think honestly, that's kind of where an area where the rare module really creates kind of a positive force. The biggest thing the rare module is there for is just creating this opportunity for these really high highs of like, wow, I drafted this like crazy card and I got to go off in this way that I never would have thought of. But it also just applies this pressure of like, well, I'm kind of doing the blue red thing, but here's this card that's like kind of adjacent to what I'm doing, but it's just like much more powerful and is kind of gonna knock me out of the seat of exactly where I was. I also like to design cubes in a way where, aside from maybe blue red, a lot of the themes are not like fully supported. So it's not just like I'm drafting green white. That means I'm drafting saplings. All I'm going to do is take every card that says saplings. It's like, well, there's not going to be enough there, and there's going to be some power outliers that are going to pull you in other directions. It's like figure out how do you balance the saplings with something else. Like I always want to have some tension to drafting because that's what makes decisions interesting and meaningful and makes the gameplay meaningful.
Definitely, I agree. I think it's really fun to have micro packages in your cube
Hmm.
that, hey, if you're a token deck and you happen to take some wolf cards and maybe you become a wolf token deck or something on the side,
Yeah.
or you get an Imperious Perfect and suddenly you're a little bit of an elf deck like we had on the Fake Cube.
Yeah, I mean, I think that creature type synergies are often a little bit maligned or not really respected in a lot of spaces, but like the fact that they are just always an option and kind of orthogonal to whatever else is happening just means like you can often sort of seed in a little bit of this alternate option, which is really interesting.
Definitely. And would you say that the rare module cards create additional archetypes that wouldn't exist without those cards in the cube?
Absolutely, yeah. A lot of them are specifically sort of chosen to be like, here's this like crazy build around, and maybe you would totally think about your deck completely differently. So like doubling season is a card that again, you might think of this is just a commander card, but watching somebody be like, I think actually even in a draft, somebody was like, is this a real card? Like, because we draft fairly casually, so somebody might have sort of slipped this to me and be like, can I play this here? And I'm like, I don't think so. I think that's an aspirational card. And then they drafted a doubling season deck and just crushed everybody. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like these are the kinds of experiences that I really want for this cube, where somebody finds something that's a little bit offbeat and is very novel, very unique, and makes it work and has a great time with it.
Yeah, like for example, some of these rare cards do create really interesting potential archetypes like Divine Visitation. Now you just take all the creature tokens and suddenly you're beaten face with 4/4 angels or Sphinx's tutelage. You can suddenly be a little bit of a mill control deck, which is really cool. Or Recurring Nightmare that we talked about. Now you can be a looping graveyard crazy insane deck, which probably wouldn't exist without these rare module cards.
Yeah, and I think it's also important that the context doesn't necessarily support any of those too much. Like Recurring Nightmare, you're not doing something that is just totally broken, but like the best thing you're doing with Recurring Nightmare is, I don't know, you're looping Gravedigger and just generating value slowly or generating like an extra token a turn. It's not like you're doing totally insane stuff, but yeah, so the context is worth considering.
Yes. And tell me about some of your favorite decks that you've seen drafted that would exist only because of these rare module cards.
I think some of like the Madness deck is obviously a lot of fun, and one of the cards that I always really enjoy seeing is Razormane Masticore because this is this like old card. It's a callback to even older cards. It forces you to discard, but it lets you lightning bolt stuff all the time. And I think that that kind of moment when somebody is like, "Oh wait, this card is actually incredible." It reads like a downside, but it just turns one of my cards into a free lightning bolt every turn. And then plus I'm gonna draft Madness stuff on top of that. That's always really exciting. The conspiracies I do really have a weird affection for, like Emissary's Ploy, people just drafting like I'm just gonna take all the, or I think somebody even had Hymn of the Wilds and Emissary's Ploy in the same deck at one point. It's just like this is the most insane five color, but actually monocolor aggro deck you've ever seen. And yeah, I mean that's a great example of the kind of thing I don't want to see that every single cube night, but to see that happen occasionally is very cool.
100%, I totally agree. All of a sudden you get Phyrexian Obliterator and you deal 10 damage
Oh
and then
man.
you destroy the opponent.
Yeah, that was maybe one of my favorite decks that I've seen. Somebody had Phyrexian Obliterator and what's the name of this? Ulvenwald Tracker that lets you fight something repeatedly. And they were just forcing me to be like, yeah, I'm just gonna have my Obliterator fight your creatures, and you have to sacrifice your whole board. Uh,
And your lands.
And I think they were using Elsewhere Flask or something to be able to actually cast the Obliterator. It was very cool.
Oh man, like I see unexpected potential in here. That's one of my favorite conspiracies. All of a
Yeah, I
sudden, you
never
could
even
be a
thought about
mono
that,
red deck and
specifically
put Phyrexian
Obliterator.
Obliterator.
That's awesome.
It's so cool. I love it. And one other thing about this cube is that it hasn't been updated much in the last couple years, which I know you've talked about on your podcast, and we were talking a little bit before we started to update your cube all the time. What would you say are some cards that, if you were to update this cube, would be really exciting to you? I made a little bit of a list that I was curious to talk to you about.
Oof. I mean, the rare module kind of cuts both ways here, both in like just to speak to why it hasn't been updated a lot. Partly it's because our cube group just has tons of cubes, and even if we're playing one of mine, we're more likely playing regular cube or turbo cube. So this cube doesn't see super ton of play. It's like every 6 weeks maybe. But the other reason is just the rare module, I think, is kind of a success in that it just kind of creates that variety that it doesn't feel like it needs a lot of updates, and also it makes it harder to see like, oh yeah, I'm not like, oh yeah, that card is obviously a problem. I need to cut that, or I need to make these changes, or I need to bolster this color because it's like, oh, sometimes some color is going to do great because they had like the right combination of rare cards that just made it super powerful. So it does just have that effect of making the draft so much more variable that it keeps things fresh. Like, so I think it's a success in that aspect. I mean, as far as particular cards, I there's so many cards that we could go into, but also like kind of the way that I've been engaging in Cube these days is I think it's so valuable that I don't have to stay engaged with the new cards that I'm not necessarily excited about. Yeah, we could put whatever we want in here.
Do you ever just throw in new cards into the rare module because you're like, oh,
Yeah,
this
and
looks fun?
I'll cut some as well. Or so for example, for a Cube for a Cause, not this last weekend, but I think it was like 6 months ago. This has kind of been a question at cube events is like if you have these more novel cubes or like ways that you seed packs, like how do we handle that at events? And I had this realization at some point that actually it doesn't really matter. Like I don't need the cube to be in its like full mutable form where it's different every time when everybody is drafting it the one time, the first time. So I just like curated a set of like 30 or 40 of the rare cards and was just like, okay, this is the iteration for Cube for Cause. And yeah, you could like memorize the list and try and learn all these rares, but like don't do that. Just like be in the spirit of it and just this is just like you have 32 random rares. They're not random, but they could be. And sort of yeah, figuring out that you can just sort of create that one crystallized experience of this is the cube for the weekend. So a lot of the sort of iterations that this cube has gone through is less about swapping out cards and more about figuring out how do I make this kind of structure work at an event, or how do we experiment with different pack sizes or experiment with different numbers of rares. And I found that to have a huge impact and actually like going up on the number. I think as I started with 32, which is like two per pack, and actually going up a little bit, like finding that balance of where do people find that their deck has like one or two cool things that it can do? Where do they feel like they have enough things that they're excited about their deck and they get to execute a couple of those cool things over the course of 3 rounds? So it's like there's a lot of iteration to be had, even just within this sort of like limited set.
Definitely. And we've definitely seen a lot of sets in recent years, over the last couple of years, that are very graveyard focused or cycling focused, even with
Hmm.
Aether Drift or Madness focused. We've even had some cards like I was seeing Patchwork Beastie, I think could be a really interesting card in here. I love that card. It's one green for a 3/3, and every upkeep you mill a card. And if you have Delirium, it can attack or block. That card is really cool. I just put that in a bunch of cubes.
Yeah, and Delirium would fit right to home here.
Yeah, or another one I was looking at could maybe be like, what about Kiora, the Rising Tide, which is a two and a blue for a 3/2, and when it enters, you draw two, discard two cards, and if you have Threshold when it attacks, get an 8/8. That could be another really interesting one.
Totally, yeah. This card really, I mean, it tells you a story. It's like, here's your little mini game, do your side quest, and that's definitely the kind of card that I'm interested in for the rare module here.
Yeah. And tell me about how you add these rare cards to the draft. We just had an episode episode 18 that was all about seeding packs and different ways you can add cards. Do you usually just shuffle them in, or do you put one or two of each of these into every pack? Tell me about how you've done it and have you experimented in different ways?
We've tried it a couple different ways. Initially, my plan was just to be like, okay, we have so many people, let's deal out the appropriate number of core set cards and then the appropriate number of rares, which is like roughly two per pack, and then shuffle that all up and deal it out. So it's like you're not guaranteed to have a certain number of rares in the cube. And again, it's like also the core module. I think because we also have the rares, it makes sense to be able to that like enables having a higher power band, higher variance within those sort of core cards as well. So it doesn't feel as unnatural to be like, oh, it's not just like I have two cards here versus zero cards that are from the rare cards, and that's like going to make or break my draft. Like there's a lot of variance here. For practical reasons, that ended up being a little bit more difficult than I expected, just because that core module is also a little bit bigger to provide some variety. So figuring out like both what counts we need from each turned out to be a little bit difficult. So it did turn out to be easier, basically just to be like, okay, we're going to deal out 13 card packs and then add two cards from the rare module to each. I'm a little bit ambivalent to that. Like, I don't think seeding the packs with a specific number of cards, like, I would be happy for it to all just be totally uniform random, but for practical reasons, that turns out to just be easier.
Yeah, somebody open up a pack and it has recurring nightmare and Wheel of Fortune and like only 15 of the rare module cards. That person is either having a good time or a bad time.
I hope they're going to have a good time. They're going to take probably one of those two cards.
Yeah.
I think it's also maybe relevant that the rare cards are not marked in any way. So it's like if you're just looking at a pack, you're not necessarily going to know this is something that I've deemed as something that I don't want to be present in every single draft. And there are going to be plenty of cards that I'm like, yeah, this is a powerful card, but it's just like a key role player. It's not going to be the kind of thing that's going to be frustrating to play multiple drafts in a row and like lose to. And yeah, I mean, maybe that's something that's worth just mentioning about those rare cards as well. Is it's not just about power level; it's also just about what are the cards that you like seeing occasionally and not necessarily every single draft.
Yeah. And how about we jump into a pack one pick one here?
I'm down.
Sweet. Well, I have a pack picked out here. We have Joel Real Mwanbali Recluse, which is one and a green for a 1/2. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, you get a 2/2 cat, and you can pay 6 to have all your creatures become XX's record number of cards in your hand. That card is a rare module card and very good. I love that card. Then we have Tender Shoot Dryad, 4 and a green, 2/2 with Ascend. And so if you have 10 permanents, you get the City's Blessing. Being of each upkeep, you get a 1/1 Sapperling. Speaking of Sapperlings, and your Sapperlings get +2/+2 as long as you have the City's Blessing.
Look,
Battlefield
it's an Anthony
Forge.
cube. You're gonna get some Saprolings.
Hey, I love it. You got to put some of your love into it. I get it. Then we have Battlefield Forge, which is red, white, Painland. Headhunter, one and a black. When it deals combat damage to a player, they discard a card. Oh, I've never seen that card. That card's really cool and has morph for one black. We have Grape Shot. That's really interesting. Is there a storm archetype in this queue?
It's not good. Don't draft it. Unless you get a couple key rares. It's my goal was to be more like you're gonna cast Empty the Warrens and be really happy with six goblins. Like,
Yeah.
but again, this is talking about like playing Wheel of Fortune in your kind of like retail limited type of deck. I was hoping to kind of make this Fair Storm deck. It's fine. Sometimes it works okay.
Yeah, I have something similar in my bulk cube where sometimes just play a Mishra's Bauble and then you play a Empty the Warrens, you get 4 goblins, and what does the opponent do about it?
That's
It's not
pretty
bad. Yeah, it's not bad. I
good.
totally get it. Then we have Krosan Tusker, a card that I always screw up. It's 2 and a green, cycling, and when you cycle it, search deck for a basic land, or it's a 7 mana 6/5. I always forget if you draw the card first or tutor, and I always say to the opponent, "Which way do you do this?" And then they get confused.
There's one version that at least that has reminder text on it
Yeah,
that
doesn't it
explains
literally
that.
say like you draw first or
Yeah.
something like that?
No, you search first.
You search
I'm
first. Oh,
80% sure.
great. Then we have Drake Haven, which is a really cool card from Amonkhet, 2 and a blue. When you cycle or discard a card, you can pay 1 and get a 2/2 blue Drake. That's the kind of card that I want to first pick. That sounds so fun. My Peasant Cube has a little bit of a cycling theme, and it would be so great to get that at uncommon. That card's great. Then we have Into the Royal, which is one in a blue and one in a blue kicker to return a non-land permanent to its owner's hand and draw a card. And it's an instant. Great card. We have Vesper Lark, which is super fun. Two and a white for a 2/1 flying. And it has Evoke for one and a white. And you can return a small creature with power one or less from your graveyard to the battlefield when it leaves the battlefield. So linking this thing is what I want to be doing to Magic. Then we have Burning Vengeance, which is two and a red. When you cast a spell from your grave, you do 2 damage to a creature or player. Apprentice Necromancer, one and a black for a 1/1. You can sack it, paying a black to return a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste, and you sack at the end of turn. Then we have Blood Chief's Thirst, great removal spell, one black. It's like a fatal push, but sorcery speed, but you can also pay two and a black to have it kill anything. Also, it's planeswalkers. Alchemist Greeting, four and a red, deal 4 damage to target, and has one red madness. Oblivion Ring, it's a great card for removal, two and a white, enchantment, exile something, and when it leaves, they get it back. And
I
then
thought you were just going to
Iron,
leave it there. It's the rules text of Oblivion Ring is Oblivion Ring. We all know what that means.
I don't know, it gets rid of the thing. And then lastly, Ironcrag Pyromancer, which is a card that I love playing with. Except it's hard to get it to work, but when you do, oh, you're going crazy with this card. Two and a red, 0/4. When you draw your second card each turn, you deal 3 damage to any target.
I feel like this pack is a pretty good representation of this cube, where it's like clearly there's some graveyard stuff going on. We got the Apprentice Necromancer, we got the Burning Vengeance, which I would also not recommend drafting in this cube, but like it's there a little bit as a signal for like
I
there's
love how
something
there's these
happening here.
cards you're like, oh, these are cool. Maybe I don't draft it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that it's so much about playing cube or like making a good cube experience for people. It's just about setting expectations. And if I set the expectation like every card is here for a reason and it's all perfect and everything works, it's like people are going to be disappointed. Just like setting the vibe that like there's doubling season. I don't think it's great, but like try it, prove me wrong. And then
Yeah.
somebody manages to do it. They're going to have way more fun than if they were going into it being like, I read this card as a promise and it didn't deliver.
Yeah, this
And then
cube's
we
got
have
a bunch
like
of weird cards, and if you can get
that's
them to
and
work,
yeah,
that's great.
that's the whole vibe of this cube. That's why this is the irregular cube and not the regular cube.
I'm seeing the vision
Um,
now.
exactly. Is Grape Shot good? I mean, if you can turn it into 2 mana, deal 3 damage divided, like that's a card.
Yeah.
As far as what I'm interested in, it's interesting that Drakehaven and Ironcrag Pyromancer are both in this pack because I think that the most successful decks in this cube, barring like having some super powerful rare, are the blue red like draw two or like cycling discard, like those kind of overlapping mechanics. And those are the two cards that are both rares, but they are in the core set that are kind of the best payoffs for that deck. So I think it would be really exciting to start with either one of those. But Tender Shoot Dryad is just like such a power outlier, just like making a sapling every single turn and then making them all huge. I I'm just gonna take the Tender Shoot Dryad.
Hey, that's a great pick. I used to play that card all the time in Commander. It's great. I mean,
Oh
every
yeah.
upkeep you get a 1/1 and then they become big. How do you lose?
You used to have
And
to pay 7 for that. Or 8. How big is that guy?
yeah, well, Verdant Force
Verdant
is
Force. I think it's
yeah.
actually 8.
I think it's five green,
Yeah.
green, green. Yeah. I mean, he slaps. That's a good card. I really like Ironcrag Pyromancer. That card is just so fun to get going. I mean, if you can pair it with, like you said, Drakehaven or Wheel Croson Tusker, so you can go 5 color stuff and also get to bolt something when you cycle it. That seems really great. I'm also pretty interested just in Bloodchief's Thirst. It's just
Yeah, I
an
mean,
efficient removal spell.
removal is very relevant, especially when we have this like bigger power level delta. Your opponents are gonna have important stuff that you want to get rid of. And there are some like random planeswalkers in here, so that all is relevant.
Yeah, the opponent might just randomly put Liliana the Veil from the rare module and kick your butt, and you got to be ready for it.
Totally possible.
Yes. Yeah, so I think I'm on Ironcrag Pyromancer. Hopefully wheel the Drakehaven, like you said.
You
That
will
just
not.
sounds awesome. I won't know.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's another thing that's so interesting about playing Cube is I feel like I know the vibe of my local group a little bit, and I'm like, yeah, these two cards are not wheeling. But then sometimes I'll go to at Vertex. It's like, oh, I'm not saying everybody doesn't know what's going on or like should have taken this card, but people draft differently than I'm used to, I guess is what I'm just trying to say.
Yeah, and people might not understand the cube as well. Like when I was at Cube for a Cause. I sat next to Gwen Decker every draft, which is
Oh
really
no.
weird. And we were in the Cascade Cube together, and like every pack, Gwen would open the pack and say, "How is this still in here? Do you guys what do you read the cards?" And I'll be like, "Maybe I'm not
I
reading the
can say
cards."
I've experienced that as well.
So maybe people just won't read Drakehaven and say, it's a weird enchantment that you need to discard cards. I don't know.
Or they maybe just have the right cautious read where it's like, does Drakehaven deserve the same skepticism as Burning Vengeance? No, but maybe.
I mean, Tender Shoot Dryad is definitely just a win the game slam
Yeah.
windmill card. Definitely.
Yeah, it just it's low cost for inclusion. It makes it pretty strong here.
Yeah. And Anthony, it's been awesome having you on the show. Do you have anything you'd like to say before we wrap up to the listeners?
I don't think so. It's been a fun conversation. Yeah, I guess I would just say like the takeaway that I've had from this cube is that having a pretty big power level delta is actually really satisfying and can lead to like some really fun, exciting gameplay moments and sort of focusing on what are those really fun high moments for your players and figuring out how to foster more of those is like what I really love to see people prioritize in their cube designs.
Yeah, I think that, like we mentioned earlier, I think that people are sometimes trying to find that perfectly balanced environment. And sometimes those weird power outliers or not smooth edges are a lot of fun. I
Yeah,
totally agree.
absolutely.
Definitely. And everyone, thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, follow, all that fun stuff, and check out Lucky Paper Radio. And we'll see you all next week.
Thanks for having me in.